All team, give it everything you got.
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in.
Never get between a Mandalorian and a weapons package.
This is the way.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
She's as important as he is.
With your hosts, Trisha Barr and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
Hello, this is Trisha Barr for Fangirls Going Rogue. Welcome, Yeb Cubs. We know you're all excited for the new Star Wars show, Andor, which debuts on Disney Plus this week. We had the good fortune to talk to one of the show's stars, Adria Arjona, with some of our fellow Star Wars podcasters, including Sarah and Richard Woloski from Skywalking Through Neverland. Sarah is also one of the co-hosts here at Fangirls Going Rogue. Mark Newbold from Fantha Tracks, and Caitlin and Charlotte from Skytalkers Podcast. If you listen to our highlight episode from the press roundtables earlier this month, you've already heard from Adria, but we got to speak to her specifically about things for her character, Bix Caleen, who plays in specific scenes across from Cassian Andor, and you get to learn a little bit about the relationship between those two characters. If you haven't been sold on watching Andor, or you're still curious, you can check out our reviews at Skywalking Through Neverland and also fangirlblog.com, or you can go ahead and listen to Adria and hear her thoughts on the series and playing the character and how it fits into the Star Wars universe. And hopefully you'll be ready to check it out and join us in this further discussion. So enjoy the interview.
Yep.
If the Imperial Security Bureau was tracking your character, Bix Caleen, what would their files say about her and who she is as a person?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, I've got to give it to Bix. I think there's something about her, and even Ferrix, right? Ferrix, as a community, it's sort of abandoned from the Imperials. They sort of don't really pay attention to them. I think Bix is really smart. I think if they were tracking her, I don't think they would know as much as they wanted to know about her. I think they would have to go ask her themselves. I think she is incredibly smart and sneaky in the way that she does things. And I think she gets away with a lot. So yeah, I think they might have known that there was a comm somewhere, but that she was a part of it, I don't know if they would have figured it out. Also, Ferrix is such a camaraderie, right? No one's going to tell on anybody. So even if they tried, it would be a lot to have them find out about her.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm Charlotte Errity from Skytalkers. So good to talk with you. I was wondering what themes in Andor resonate with you.
So honestly, so many. I think, this is a story about people, right? About people at a cusp of a revolution, and what does that mean, right? Does that mean you step forward? Does that mean you step back? What is each character sort of going through? And I think everyone's moral compass is sort of being questioned. And I feel like in the past 2 years, we've been questioning as a society our moral compasses, and we're starting to realize that we all sort of, which we have been forever, sort of living in this gray, murky area, right? Which I think we haven't seen that side of Star Wars yet. We haven't seen what the civilians of this universe are really doing, and what are they up to. And, being at a cusp of a revolution means that there's people that have everything in common, but also have nothing in common at all, very much like in our own society. and you know, what do you do when there's a movement? Do you take a stand? Do you take a stand back out of fear? Are you brave? Are you allowing space? And what is your part in that? And I think everyone in this show, every character is sort of questioning that and trying to figure that out for themselves. And that is incredibly interesting to me, because I've asked that same question to myself in the world that we live in, and as I keep getting older. And I think Bix is asking those exact same questions to herself: is, do I stay as a businesswoman and run the show in this Sal yard and really get to enjoy what I've worked so hard for? Or do I risk it all for someone that I love and I know is in trouble? And she doesn't, knowing that it's at her own detriment. And kind of by playing her, the definition of bravery was sort of redefined in my head, right? You're like, oh, bravery is going out there and fighting and doing, and it's really sometimes just kind of taking a step back or taking a step forward, not necessarily fighting, or fighting even a cost that's yours. It's standing up for people that you love and admire. And I think she does that. So those themes, you know, are really interesting to me. And the whole show really is just about people and what they're going through. And you get to see like a peek behind the curtain of what happens to these people and their intimacy, and why are they making these decisions. So it kind of doesn't allow people to be like, oh, that character is a bad character, or that character is a hero and that character is a good person. I think that becomes a whole different experience for audience members, and those themes are kind of exciting to me, and the reason I'm really part of it.
The second question came from Mark Newbold from Fantha Tracks.
My question is, Ferrix, it's very blue collar, it's dirt under the fingernails, it's hard-working people, and Bix is kind of at the heart of that community. But before the events of Andor, do you think Bix has ever seen anything of the galaxy off Ferrix, or do you feel in your heart that she's a local girl and that's what she knows and that's what she's seen?
I think she has, but I think like a good Ferrixian, I think she's from there. She doesn't leave. She stays because that's where her people are. That I think there's a community and a camaraderie that is unexplainable that happens in Ferrix. And I think you get to sort of feel it in the first 3 episodes where people are exchanging information, people are exchanging parts, people help one another. And at the core of it really is Marva. You know, I think at least Bix thinks Marva is like the queen of Ferrix and idolizes her. So no, I don't think she has left. Why would she? Right? I think she knows about everything that is going on in different parts of the galaxy, and she can kind of feel oppression getting closer and closer. But this place, like I said before, is kind of forgotten. And so I do want to believe that she maybe has traveled and explored, but Ferrix is her home. Ferrix is where her roots are in. And then that also becomes a different question, right? Like, what then happens? Like, if she's got to go, she'll be the first one out. But I do think there's something that, as someone from Ferrix, you stay with your people, you stay with, you know, with your community.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, the other half of Skytalkers. So nice to talk to you today. My question was, we've heard great things about the completely built set of Ferrix. What was the experience of working on a fully immersive set like that?
I love that you said immersive, because I feel like that's the word that I keep using. You know, I think when you sign up to a show like Star Wars, I imagined in my head when I first signed on that it was going to be a lot of green screens, and it was going to be another style of working that I hadn't really done before, or it was all going to be in studio. And, you know, speaking to Tony, he's like the coolest dude alive, and he was brilliant. He kind of played it so cool. He was like, yeah, you know, we build, you know, Ferrix exists. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm still thinking it's going to be in the studio. And first day of rehearsals, I walked on set and I was like, this is a city. It's a, it's, I don't know the actual measurements, but I keep 7 city blocks, and that still feels a little small. It was huge. I got lost, and I also was able to explore, like, where does Bix have a drink after work? Where does she go have, her favorite meal? Where is it in Ferrix? And where does she buy certain things? And I really got to explore that personal side of her because I was living in Ferrix. I lived there for months. That's where I spend the majority of my time. I just went home to sleep. I was spending more time in Ferrix than I was in my apartment in London. So I really, in between takes, was able to walk the streets, and it had a specific smell that I had never smelled before. It was also outdoors. So if it rained in London, it rained in Ferrix. It just felt like I was there. So as a first timer in Star Wars, I think I got the best gift in the world, which is I got my city, which Bix is, like I was mentioning before, she's so from Ferrix. And you can have an idea of that, right? As an actor, you can kind of create it. But I think living in it and walking those streets and having your director tell you, okay, here's a running scene, run. And I go, where? He goes, just make sure you go from the stairs to the main road, to Rick's Road. And I know where it is because at this point I know the geography, and every street had a name. So I go, oh, okay. But I'm like, do I go left? Do I go right? And he's like, wherever you want. Because it was filmable 360. I could basically be the owner of my own sort of narrative in that specific scenario, which was a running scene. And I just found it to be the coolest thing and the most liberating thing I've ever experienced as an actor. I usually have to create this in my mind, and here it was just handed off and given to me.
Hey, we are Richard and Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland. Thanks so much for joining us here. So it was great seeing you at D23 Expo last weekend. So
that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
So now, what is your big takeaway about the enthusiastic Star Wars fandom?
I was not prepared for that. I wish someone would have warned me. I walked in and I was like, how many people are there? He's like, about 500. And I was like, oh, cool. 500, that's that's a lot of people. And then I walked out on stage and I'm like, there's only 500 people in like this part. There was like thousands of people, which I guess people were like, we don't want her to get too nervous. It was nerve-wracking, exciting. And I remember leaving and feeling like that, those like butterflies in your belly, and being like, oh my God, I actually get to put a face on the reason of why I did this to begin with. I've never been able to do that. You hear about it in social media, you feel people's presence, around and through the critics and reviews and this, or you hear fan comments on the internet, but you never see like faces. And that was just so cool. You're like, oh, this is why I did this show. This is why I've kept every secret about this show quiet. And it's just made it so, because before I was like, I'm the worst at keeping a secret. I'm the worst. And then meeting everyone and seeing everyone, I was like, oh no, I'm keeping it a secret to protect your experience. And it all sort of clicked in my head. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. Like, wow.
That's it for this episode of Fangirls Going Rogue. If you haven't checked out our D23 Expo highlights episode, please look for it on fangirlsgoingrogue.com. And if you want to talk about Andor or anything Star Wars over on our social media, this is where to find us. You can visit us over at fangirlsgoingrogue.com. For Twitter and Instagram, Fangirls Going Rogue at FG Going Rogue, Trisha at Fangirl Cantina, Sarah at Jedi Tink, Sandra at Geek Chic 9. You can leave us a voicemail, 331-21-EWOKs, or 331-213-9657. Send us an email, contact@fangirlsgoingrogue.com. On Facebook, you can find us typing in Fangirls Going Rogue. You can either go to our public page or join our private group. You have to answer 3 questions in order to join. Or please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. We need your reviews so more people can find us. Until next time, yep.